Alright, today we're going to look at making voxel furniture, or at least a couple ways to do it, because there's about 50 ways to do anything in Landmark, and this is definitely not the only way, but this is an easy way. So in previous tutorials, we talked about microvoxels and megavoxels, and if you did not watch those tutorials, I would definitely recommend looking up the megavoxel tutorial at least. It's only like 5 minutes long. But we're going to duplicate a bit of that in this tutorial. What we want to do is create some voxel shapes that are going to fit together cleanly so that you can build squarish shapes out of them. The first thing we want to decide is how fat we want, for example, the legs of chairs or the thin poles in this furniture to be. I'm going to pick this size, fairly arbitrary. Let's say if I want a bookshelf, I would want my shelves to be that thick. If I built a chair, I would want my legs to be that thick. Your choice may vary, but I'm going to copy that particular voxel, and I'm going to use it to make a megavoxel this size. What I'm going to do first, though, is I'm going to set up a 3x3 box. Just going to fill that in there. So that is 3x3. And I'm going to paint this in some different colors just so we can tell the difference. I'm going to paint the center with wood, and since I happen to have gold out here, I'm going to paint the center of each side in gold. The middle square is still going to be wood from when I painted all the way through, and you can pretend that I painted the bottom one. We're not going to look at that one. Alright, so now I'm taking that voxel that I copied, I like that size, and I'm going to paste it into the 4 corners of this box. And as I paste it, obviously it's much smaller than the original, so you're going to see all of its neighbor voxels shrink to fit, because we know that the most recently pasted or changed voxel is the one that keeps its shape, and all of its 26 neighbors are forced to change their shapes for it. So as I paste this microvoxel, it's making all of the voxels that touch it deform to fit it. Alright, so now I've pasted that into all 8 corners of this box, and you can see that the shapes of the voxels have changed pretty significantly. The gold ones on top here got stretched really wide and, in fact, fairly flat. The ones on the edges have been turned into sort of rods, and you can't see it here, but the one in the middle is a big fat megavoxel. And if I select that and copy it out, paste it out here, you can see. There it is. So what this has created is these 4 different shapes of voxels. The megavoxel here, the microvoxels at the corners, and these rods and this flat panel all fit together perfectly. I can copy this flat panel and I can put it directly on top of that, and it's not going to change its shape at all. I can put it beside here, nothing changes shape. I can copy this over and over, these 6 at the top. I can make a tile pattern with them, and they stay perfectly true to shape because they have been formed as each other's neighbors. They fit perfectly. So that makes this cube here basically a little Landmark furniture kit if you want. I mean, you can probably already see that this would make quite a nice floor pattern or tile pattern on your wall, maybe line your shower with it, and you get hugely different effects as you paint this different colors. If I painted this, for example, with plastic, and then I selected a black color to do all of the grout in between, it looks completely different than the way it did a minute ago. I can also create some optical illusions by the way I paint it. I could make it look, oops, I could make it look as if it was alternating tiles, even though it isn't really. Like that, like bricks. And if I were to paint this wood, it would look completely different again. So let me go upstairs to my little halfling home that I've been building and show you some examples of how I've been using this. So here is the main example. I've been making little furniture shelves, or little bookshelves rather, bookshelf furniture. And I did this, in fact you can see with this little furniture set here. It's a little hard to see, but if I paint it, you'll see more clearly. Here is the micro voxel size that I chose to be the size of my shelves and struts, and here is the mega voxel and the kit around it that I used for the shelves. So you can see that is my shelf thickness. One thing that I had to do, because I wanted to paste this against a wall to make a wall mounted shelf, is you'll notice that this panel on its own is slightly pushed into the wall when I align it up close. If I were to paste that, it would deform the wall. You can see the wall sort of dents inwards when I place that. I don't want that, that's not a good effect. But that's because this panel is larger than a normal voxel on every side. If I use my select volume, you'll see that is where a normal voxel border ends. But the wall is just ending at a normal voxel border, so they don't match. We can use the line tool trick from the previous tutorial. Click the line tool a couple times on one edge of this to force that edge towards a normal voxel boundary. You can already see that it's now wider than it's long, and if I put my selection volume over it, you can see this side of it now aligns perfectly with a voxel border, which means if I paste it against the wall here, now it's not going to deform the wall at all. Perfect. So I actually want to do that with the sides as well. So I want the little bars in the front bit as well, perhaps. Or actually, I didn't use the front bit here. I only used that. But I want both of those shortened. All right, so now those can be repeated very cleanly all the way across my wall, except that when I get to this pillar, I'm going to have the same problem, because this ends at a voxel border. This is going to stick into it. So I just need to do the same thing that I just did to the back, to the side. So this now fits a normal voxel border on two sides, these two sides, but it still overhangs on the front two sides. And now if I copy this and I paste it, no deformation, fits perfectly. So I created my shelves like that. Obviously, copy and paste is your friend in all cases, Landmark. I decided to space it out that far, but I could have spaced it any distance. I can always add more vertical bars in between here if I want it spaced more widely. Now I went back and I grabbed a vertical here. In fact, I grabbed the vertical and the two little dots above and below. And I'm pasting these in the front here. I like that effect, so that's just what I chose to do. You might choose to do something different. You could also grab the vertical slab like that. Again, you're going to need to use the line tool trick to flatten that to a voxel border. But having done that, I could use that to make solid boundaries between the shelves. Really depends on the look you're going for. I think this is a little more modern looking, a little more IKEA-ish almost. Kind of like this one for my particular library. Totally depends what style you want. And then I just filled it with prop books. The one tricky bit here is the baseboard. Let me turn on my lights down so you can see hopefully a little more clearly. All right, so there is a 1 voxel wide baseboard here, which I think just adds a little interest to it. So I painted that in there. And then I copied this on top of it so that it stretches it out slightly, but I think the effect is fine. The important thing to note here is that I needed to place the shelf second so that it maintained its exact shape, and it was the baseboard that was stretched. If I were to attempt to put the baseboard in after the shelf, it deforms the shelf because it's always the most recently placed voxel that keeps its shape, and the neighbors are deformed. So that was the only trick there. Oh, and obviously, if I want to make a longer support between, I can just paste these up as much as I like and paint them however I want. I chose, in this case, to use some slightly different colors of wood. This is a darker burled wood and this is a light burled wood, just to give a little contrast. But depends entirely on the effect you want. So you can also use this to make any other type of furniture you like, of course. We could make a chair. Again, when you are going to place something against the ground, however, it will deform the ground unless we use that line tool trick. So I'm actually going to copy a horizontal one because it's going to be an easier angle. Let me paint that so it's more visible against the wood. So line tool trick on the end. Just click that a couple times. That end now aligns with a voxel boundary. Rotate that so that the end we adjusted is against the floor. Oops, did I rotate that the wrong way? Probably. Yes, there we go. And by the way, you could see from my error, you could see the difference. If I had not flattened it, it would have dented the floor like that. When I did flatten it, it doesn't affect the floor at all. So let's make our chair legs. Let's paste our chair seat. And another for the back. That's a very small chair. I can make it look like a solid construction just by painting the whole thing. And if I want bits of it bigger, I can always copy, paste, and add more. could do the same to lengthen the legs if I wanted. And remember, I can choose different paint colors for different effects. Oops, as long as I have that material, which I do not. How about yellow? Okay, yellow. There we go. So I could make a little pattern like that if I wanted. Or not if I don't want. And I don't have to keep this rigidly square. This is a great base to make your initial shapes, but maybe you don't want it exactly ruler straight. You can always smooth it a bit. Just one tap of the smooth tool. Or I could use different microvoxel sizes. Maybe I want, I don't know, maybe I want something a normal voxel size at the top. What if I shrink this one? On all four sides. So this is now thin, but the size of a voxel on all horizontal directions. I could try sticking this in various places to get different effects. If I put it in the seat, it's going to pull the back in, so I probably don't want that. But undo. But I could put it in the back, and as long as it's not adjacent to the seat, it's not going to cause a deformation of the seat. I could put it at the top to make a angle on the top, and so on. Just play around with it. You'll be surprised how much you can do. And remember, of course, that just by painting it, you can come up with tons of different looks. You could make it look like an iron chair. You could make it look like a plastic deco chair. You can get a whole bunch of different effects by what materials you use. Alrighty. Oops, I missed a leg. And let me also remind you, you can combine this technique with other techniques. Let's say we want something that looks like a more modern chair. What I can do is build the basic shape out of voxels. Maybe make that one higher. All right, now I'm going to select this. I'm going to copy and paste it so it's floating in the air so that the floor doesn't interfere in any way. And I could use it just like this as a square, but I would like this very slightly smoothed. So all of it's selected. I'm going to go to the smooth tool, hold down F to smooth a little more gently. Just going to tap it, I think, once. And now I get this very sci-fi looking, almost commander's chair. I can use these to make a base for the chair. I could do it in points, actually, or I could do it as one single one. If we do a little cross out of microvoxels, stretch it so that it ends at a voxel barrier, and then flip it upside down. Let me also paint it for a nice metal look. I'm gonna flip that. Now that will place on the floor without deforming it much. And I can also use the line tool trick on the floor to flatten that perfectly well. All right. Now grab my vertical here, place that there, paint that as well, and paste this on top of it. Oops, too close. Really want to be using tweak mode to align that properly. There we go. Now, if I don't like the way that bulged out, all I need to do is recopy it in place, because remember, the most recently placed voxel keeps its shape. There we go. However, because that is taller than a voxel border, it dented the bottom in. So again, line tool trick, flatten that top with a couple of clicks, paint it while I'm at it, then copy and paste it in place. Oops. I didn't copy that. Copy and paste. And there we go. Saw just a little bit of a change there, but nothing major. The other way I could make feet for this chair, copy this over here. I could also choose to use a micro voxel. I'm going to rotate that and paste it under each of the four corners. It's pulling down the chair slightly to meet it, but I had actually, oops, intended that because I quite like the look of that. You should, if you've been paying attention, know by now how to avoid that if that's not what you want. I like that look though. And then I'm just going to paint that. I like the tin and obsidian. So there we go. And of course, as always, oops, totally different effects depending what you painted. If we go for cloth, for example, kind of tacky, but totally different effect. So play around with that. Alrighty. Now, if you do this a lot, you may want to just save these shapes on your voxel board, like the voxel board that I have down below. Save your shapes that you use frequently, and then you can just grab them off the board as you need them. These ones that I made down here, they're essentially what I was doing for those chair legs. And it's always handy to be able to pick the microvoxel and the megavoxel that match. They're essentially going to be a match set like this if you pick them from the same vertical line. If you don't use them often, or if you can't be bothered, you don't have to make a voxel wall. It's just a convenience. You can find more than enough voxel walls on swap meets as well, but personally I prefer to make my own because then I know what everything in it is. I can sometimes find other people's walls confusing because I didn't make it. Your mileage may vary, figure out whatever you want. And I just thought I'd show you briefly over here. This is going to be my halfling kitchen. I started installing some counters. It's exactly the same technique. I've used exactly the same shape as I used to make the bookcases, but in this case I've painted it in vertical lines as if they're cupboards. What I can actually do is add some props as well to be handles. That's probably not the best one, but let's go with it. Make it smaller, a little smaller, and rotate it. Oops. And I can sink it in. And duplicate it to make handles for my cupboards. By the way, I'm holding down the Alt key. Once you're in tweak mode on a prop, right click, tweak mode. If you hold down Alt, it will duplicate that prop at the exact size and startion as the prop that you are tweaking. If you don't hold down Alt, tweak mode just moves it. Just a little trick. So there we go. And I'll probably repaint these. The horizontal boards don't look very good here, but that's just an example of what they could look like. I might make them something more modern looking, like plastic. Oops. And the countertops as well. If I were to paint these, you would see they're actually the same tiles as we've been working with. I've just painted them so you can't tell that. And I'll obviously fill in the sides when I'm done. Oh, and this is just an example of how the exact same pattern could look like, almost like, I don't know, a tile pattern. Could make a shower or something out of that. Or imagine, oops, imagine if rather than blue plastic, imagine if we went for ice or glass. Let's go for ice because it's a little frostier. Translucent polished ice. That'll do. A couple different options there. Or the glass. It's the tackish glass. So great for windows. Could use it for shower stalls, etc. Could have glass fronted counters. Lots of options. All right. Well, I think that is everything that covers the basics of making voxel furniture. Other people have lots of different techniques. You'll probably invent some as you play around with it. But hopefully that's given you some ideas and some techniques to use. So thanks for joining, and more tutorials to come.